and welcome to the Grim. I'm your host, Kristin. Today we're opening the gate and stepping into Recoleta Cemetery, a city of the dead tucked inside the restless heart of Buenos Aires, Argentina. Here marble angels loom over crumbling tombs, and the names of presidents, poets, and the damned echo through the narrow shadowed corridors. The aroma of coffee mingles in the air. The gates stand open. Step carefully. It's time to descend into the hauntings of history. In the heart of Buenos Aires, a Parisian dreamscape holds one of the world's most famous cities of the dead. Elegant facades and French chateaux stand beside modern high-rises, breathing a strange duality. The air itself feels vibrant yet mournful, like tango music echoing from a shadowed alleyway, at once a celebration and a requiem. In Recoleta, death doesn't hide. It's a constant, silent resident. The neighborhood's name, meaning calm, feels deeply ironic for a place where the dead now outnumber the living, but its origins trace back to the 18th century monastery founded by the Recollet Fathers, Franciscan monks who sought quiet renunciation from the world. Before this land was a city of tombs, it was their orchard, blooming beside the stark white church that still watches over the square today. Some say a piece of that monastic quietude seeped into the soil itself, consecrating the land with a solemn energy that can still be felt among the tombs today. In 1822, La Recoleta became Buenos Aires' first public cemetery. Its layout, an elegant maze of tomb-lined corridors and shadow-drenched alcoves, was conceived by French engineer Prospero Catelin, the same architect who shaped the city's metropolitan cathedral in the Plaza de Mayo. Spread across 14 shadowed acres, Recoleta Cemetery is a city of the dead carved from stone and silence. Within its iron gates lie 4,691 above-ground vaults, each a monument to memory, and of those, 94 are protected by the Argentine government as National Historic Monuments, their decay watched over by the state like relics too sacred to forget. Visitors enter through imposing neoclassical gates crowned with Doric columns, a threshold that feels less like a doorway and more like a passage between worlds. Inside, the mausoleums rise like frozen cathedrals, crafted from imported marble, draped in statuary, and shaped by styles that range from Baroque and Neo-Gothic to the surreal grace of Art Nouveau and the stark elegance of Art Deco. Between 1880 and 1930, the families of Buenos Aires spared no expense, importing materials from Paris and Milan to construct tombs fit for kings, saints, and ghosts alike. To step through the gates of Recoleta is to enter a city built only for the dead. Here marble angels weep over ivy-clad tombs, iron doors groan in the wind, and beauty turns ghostly. It's a world where elegance is sharpened by decay. If the living city stirs your soul, this silent one will leave you haunted. Its stone passageways are laid out like city streets, winding through a silent metropolis of tombs. The mausoleums stand shoulder to shoulder like tight-knit houses, but their only residents are the departed. They're perfect miniature homes with doors and windows, their thresholds now only crossed by memory and dust. Within these mausoleums, the illusion of life continues. Some descend 2 or 3 levels underground, hidden chambers carved deep into the earth, each one cradling rows of caskets, sometimes 30 or more, slotted like drawers in a forgotten cabinet. The architecture shifts from modest to magnificent. Crumbling brick vaults lean beside marble sanctuaries that gleam like bone in the afternoon light. Some structures echo the grandeur of Grecian temples, Gothic chapels, or somber castles. Monuments built not just to inter, but to immortalize. Bronze and stone statues watch from every corner, their faces solemn, streaked with rain and time. Angels stand mid-prayer, wings crack. Madonnas weep behind iron grills. Inside the more elaborate tombs, stained glass windows filter dim light across dusty offering tables, empty vases, and broken marble floors. There are rooms here once meant for the living to mourn, a place to sit, to remember, to speak to the dead. Now some lie in ruin, glass shattered, ceilings caved, vines curling through broken locks. Recoleta is a paradox of preservation and decay. In one crypt, the dead sleep beneath polished altars. In the next, they lie beneath collapsed stone and peeling walls, forgotten even by time. Yet both speak. Whispers caught in the wind, in shadow, in silence. Beauty lives here, yes, but the beauty is haunted by absence. Within the labyrinth of Recoleta Cemetery, there stands a vault unlike any other. An opulent, elegant sanctuary belonging to the Doric Basuldo family. It looms like a chapel abandoned by the living, not by time. Its spire and stained glass forever stained by silence and secrets. The family behind the tomb were no ordinary souls. The Dorrego and Ortiz Basulo bloodlines once pulsed through the veins of Argentina's aristocracy, as wealthy landowners, political power brokers, and allies of men like Juan Manuel de Rosas. But prestige like flesh eventually fades, and here in death the family made their final statement, not of humility but of grandeur. The mausoleum is adorned with a chilling sculpture, a woman cast in stone, lighting a 7-branched candelabrum beneath a watchful cross. This haunting tableau echoes the biblical parable of the 10 virgins, a warning from beyond the veil to remain ever vigilant, ever prepared for judgment. Above her, a Latin inscription whispers through the centuries, O crux ave spes unica, hail the cross, our only hope. When peering in, a stained glass rosette casts eerie colors across the mausoleum's interior on sunny days, like holy fire caught in a cage of stone. The air inside feels heavier, though, sacred, stilled, as though time itself dares not to intrude. Whispers linger around this tomb. Some claim the 7-branched candelabrum is no mere ornament, but a quiet relic of buried ancestry, perhaps a trace of faith long concealed beneath a carefully polished Catholic veneer. Others speak only in hushed tones about the symbolism, uncertain whether it offers salvation or concealment. But truth, like the dead, is not always eager to rise. The Dorrego Ortiz Basuldo Mausoleum is not just a monument. It's a fortress of memory, a shrine to wealth, faith, and the dread silence that follows power. Proof that even the grandest palace is, in the end, just a cage for bones. Of the thousands of souls resting in Recoleta, one is more famous than all the others combined. She's the reason most visitors walk these silent stone streets, searching for a single tomb. History remembers her as Evita, a name still whispered with devotion, disdain, and disbelief. Born Maria Eva Duarte in 1919, she was the illegitimate daughter of a wealthy man's mistress. An unwelcome child in polite society, her existence was contested from the start, but she refused to be forgotten. At 15, she boarded a train to Buenos Aires, fueled with little more than raw ambition and resentment. She became an actress, draped in glamour but cloaked in a fierce hunger for recognition, love, and vengeance against the class that had shunned her family at her own father's funeral. But acting was only the overture. Her true performance began in 1944, when she met Colonel Juan Domingo Perón. When they married a year later, she stepped onto the national stage, not as a decorated first lady, but as a revolutionary. She became the voice of the decamisados, the shirtless ones. She walked among the dying, kissed the lepers, and built hospitals with one hand, while building her own myth with the other. She spoke with the cadence of a saint, but with the prophecy of a ruler. She didn't just love the people, she owned them, and they her. Her enemies, the military, the aristocracy, and the church, called her a manipulative fraud. They loathed her origins and feared her power, but their hatred was useless. She moved through it like a ghost through locked doors. She built a charitable empire and won the right to vote for Argentina's women. When she announced her candidacy for vice president, the nation itself held its breath. But fate had its own script. In 1951, at the height of her power, Evita was diagnosed with advanced cervical cancer. She refused to step back. Emaciated, fevered, and barely able to stand, she delivered speeches like prayers torn from the grave. She became translucent, angelic, terrifying in her martyrdom. At her final public appearance, she was sewn into her dress so she could remain upright. Her death, when it came in 1952 at the age of 33, wasn't just a passing, it was a canonization. But even death could not silence her story. Her body was embalmed in a bizarre, almost sacred process, meant to preserve her as the spiritual leader of a nation. But with Perón's fall from power in 1955, Evita's corpse became a threat. Too powerful to display, too dangerous to destroy, so the military stole it. Her remains vanished. For nearly 16 years, Eva Perón wandered in the afterlife of exile, buried secretly in Milan under a false name, entombed in the dark while her legend grew brighter and more grotesque. In 1971, her body was returned to Juan Perón in Spain. When he died, she was brought home again to Argentina and interred, finally or supposedly, in the Duarte family tomb in Recoleta Cemetery. Her final resting place is now reinforced with steel and concrete, buried 5 meters underground, as though even now the living fear she might rise again. She's here beneath the polished slabs and climbing ivory, not as a Perón, but as a Duarte. The tomb bears no grandioso statue, no proclamation, and yet the flowers never stop. Her name never fades. How do you bury a myth? Eva Perón was never royalty, nor was she a saint. She was something far harder to contain, a story that had already escaped into the world, a ghost that refuses to be laid to rest, haunting Argentina to this day. There's a sorrow in Recoleta that equals its beauty, a grief etched into every stone. Perhaps its most tragic monument belongs to a young woman, frozen in time just before her tomb. Carved in flowing robes, she reaches for a door that will never open. Her name is Rufina Cabreceres. Her story is one of the most unsettling ever whispered in this city of the dead. She was born into privilege in 1883, the only daughter of Gino Cabreceres, an aristocrat and writer, a part of Argentina's elite. Her life was a picture of beauty and ease, ornate dresses, gilded salons, a name that opened doors. But as with so many tales in Recoleta, hers does not end with grace. On her 19th birthday in 1902, Rufina was preparing to attend the opera. Just hours before the evening's affair, she collapsed. Doctors declared her dead of a sudden heart attack, an affliction unthinkable for someone so young, so vibrant. Her grieving mother, shattered, ordered a swift burial in the family mausoleum. Rufina was laid to rest in a fine coffin placed in a sealed crypt behind heavy iron doors. But death had not come for Rufina, not yet. Days later, a cemetery worker reported strange noises from the Cabreceres vault. When the tomb was opened, horror greeted them. The coffin had been violently disturbed. The lid was cracked. Rufina's face was bruised, her fingers bloodied. Deep gouges ran along the inside of the coffin lid. She had been buried alive. Whether catalepsy had mimicked death or the doctors simply erred remains unknown. But one thing is for certain. Rufina woke in the dark, trapped beneath stone, and fought to return to the world of the living, but no one heard her cries. To atone for the unimaginable, her mother commissioned an Art Nouveau mausoleum. A life-size statue of Rufina now stands before the tomb, sculpted in stone as she might have looked in life, young, beautiful, and reaching toward the door that sealed her fate. Visitors say they've seen her statue cry tears from the stone, or heard soft weeping near her grave during storms. Others claim to have seen a pale figure in white wandering just beyond the marble corridors, searching. Many leaf flowers at her mausoleum. For Rufina Cabreceres, death became something more, a symbol of tragedy, of terror, and of the frail veil between breath and silence. Unlike the generals, presidents, and aristocrats who surround him in Recoleta, David Aleno was not born into wealth or fame. He spent his days in service to the dead, a humble caretaker who swept their paths, polished their tombs, and listened to the silence they left behind. But David didn't just walk among the mausoleums, he dreamed of joining them. For decades he worked in Recoleta Cemetery, saving every peso with one strange, unwavering goal: To one day be buried in the very necropolis he served. Not content with just simply purchasing a plot, David commissioned an Italian sculptor to carve his own likeness in stone, a statue of himself holding the tools of his trade, which it still stands there today, tucked beside the tombs of the elite as if watching over them even now. And then, once everything was prepared, the story turned grim. Legends whisper that after completing his burial arrangements, plot, statue, and all, David returned home and took his own life. Some say he died just hours after seeing his likeness installed. Others claim it was all part of his plan all along to ensure his place among the honored dead. Today, visitors pass his tomb without fanfare, but those who know the story sometimes pause to take a moment and listen. They say you can still hear the faint sound of jangling keys echoing down the stone paths of Recoleta, a quiet reminder that David Aledo, the cemetery's most faithful servant, may have never left at all. He became a myth in Argentina, but the man they called Guillermo Brown was not born in the port of Buenos Aires. His story began in 1777, an ocean away among the misty green hills of Foxford, Ireland, with a destiny that would make him more than just a sailor. Brown arrived in Buenos Aires in the early 1800s, drawn by tides of revolution. With salt in his blood and command in his eyes, he offered his seafaring prowess to a nation still finding its name. Through civil wars and foreign sieges, Brown carved a legacy with cannon fire and clever maneuvers, battling Spanish fleets, Brazilian navies, and the chaos of the young republic's growing pains. He didn't fight for gold or glory. He fought for belonging, for a country that wasn't his by birth, but would be by death. In Recoleta Cemetery, where stone angels weep for poets and presidents, Brown's tomb rises like a ship caught in eternal wind, a towering green column, crowned with a model frigate whose sails are forever full. Beneath lies a bronze urn, forged from the cannons of his own warships, silent, cold metal now guarding the man it once obeyed. He was the only foreign-born commander to be canonized, not by the church, but by history. The Argentine Navy still bears his name, but it's the cemetery's hush, beneath drifting leaves and iron gates, that his ghost seems closest. He carved his legacy with ink and fire. Domingo Faustino Sarmiento was not born into power in 1811, he seized it. To him, ignorance was a kind of death, and education the only resurrection, a belief that drove him from the dark skies of San Juan to the presidency, leaving the mark of a writer, a teacher, and a revolutionary. Sarmiento saw Argentina not as it was, but as it could be, a land tamed not by sword, but by schoolbook. He championed libraries, laid down railroads, and reimagined a country haunted by violence and ruled by silence. As president from 1868 to 1874, he sparked transformation, dragging the nation, some unwillingly, into the modern world. But reform is rarely gentle. He viewed gauchos and rural traditions with suspicion, scorning them as obstacles to his vision. In his wake, he left progress, yes, but also unrest. His pen could inspire or condemn, and both left scars. In Recoleta Cemetery, Sarmiento's grave is anything but subtle. A monolithic stone column rises toward the sky, toppled by a bronze condor, wings spread wide, talons poised, watching over the dead with cold vigilance. The monument was his own design, a final lesson in symbolism. The condor is both a guardian and predator just like him. Visitors leave books, pencils, and weather-worn flowers at the base of his tomb. Children come on field trips, barely aware they're kneeling at the feet of a man who helped shape the various schools they attend. And so the great condor watches on, a predator whose most enduring legacy was teaching a nation's children how to read, and perhaps his final and most important lesson. The great figures of history demand your attention in Recoleta, but the cemetery's most haunting whispers often come from the graves of those who never had a chance to build a legacy at all. It should have been the beginning. At 26 years old, Liliana Grosskakiti de Zalzak was on her honeymoon in the Australian Alps when an avalanche buried her. In an instant, there was only snow and silence. Miles back in Buenos Aires, her beloved dog Sabu began to howl and then died instantly at the exact same moment. Liliana's devastated parents brought her home. In Recoleta, they built her not a tomb, but a recreation of her life frozen in time. A strange and beautiful neo Gothic vault, where a life size bronze statue of Liliana stands in her wedding gown, her hand resting forever on the head of her loyal Sabu. Behind her, her father's poem is etched in stone, an aching tribute to a life that never reached its spring. And so Liliana remains, forever a bride before a door she can never enter, and a life that was never truly lived. Long before his name was carved in stone, Jose Clemente Paz etched himself into Argentina's history with nothing but a pen. Born in 1842 in Buenos Aires, Paz was a man of words and will. He founded La Prensa in 1869, a newspaper that would go on to become one of the most influential in Latin America, a voice that echoed from parlor rooms to presidential halls, from dusty railway stations to the drawing rooms of Europe. But Jose Clemente Paz was no mere observer. He was a soldier in the Paraguayan War, a politician, and a diplomat representing Argentina in Paris and Madrid. He lived between battles and ballrooms, speaking as fluently in ink as he did in strategy. In every chapter of his life, there was motion, direction, conviction, the same at death. His tomb in Recoleta Cemetery is among the most elaborate ever built in Argentina, crafted by French sculptor Jules Coutain. It rises like a cathedral to grief. A towering marble angel lifts the veiled body of a woman, death incarnate, into the afterlife. Her face is hidden, his legacy is not. Visitors often stand in silence before it, unsure whether they're witnessing a burial or a resurrection. The monument just isn't about past. It's about the weight of a life built on influence, how words can shape nations, how ideas can outlive flesh, and how even death can be turned into some kind of stage. Some arrive at greatness by ambition, others by accident. Carlos Pellegrini arrived by necessity. Born in 1846 to a French mother and Swiss father, Pellegrini lived a life shaped by intellect and duty. A lawyer by training and a pragmatist by nature, he served in multiple government roles before being thrust into power when Argentina was on the verge of collapse. In 1890, amid political and financial crisis that threatened to bring the young nation to its knees, he became president. They called him El Gringo, but he was no outsider to chaos. Pellegrini stepped into the office after the resignation of Miguel Angel Juarez Selman and immediately set about restoring the machinery of state. His calm hand and calculating mind brought economic stability, institutional reforms, and the creation of the Banco de Nacional Argentina, a fortress built not of stone but of trust. He was not beloved like others. He didn't inspire with fiery speeches or romantic visions. But he held the line. He made Argentina governable again, and that, in his time, was nothing short of salvation. In Recoleta Cemetery, his tomb is elegant but restrained, a neoclassical structure adorned with symbols of public service and reason. No weeping angels, no weeping allegories, just clean lines, balance, permanence. And the front bears a bronze relief of the Jockey Club, an institution he founded and a symbol of elite order and civility. Where others lie beneath drama, Pellegrini lies beneath structure. There's a silence in his corner of the cemetery, as even if the dead respect his need for clarity. As daylight fades and the last visitors depart, Recoleta transforms. The marble city of the dead grows quiet, watchful, and belongs once more to its permanent residents. It's this twilight hour that its most famous ghost appears. She's not always seen, but when she is, it's around dusk. Among the high-arched vaults and wrought iron gates, just as the light begins to bleed from the sky, a figure glides along the cobbled paths. tall, pale, draped in mourning lace. Always elegant, always alone. Tourists catch her from the corner of their eye. Some believe she's part of the cemetery tour, an actress hired to lend drama to the evening. No one approaches her. No one has ever the chance because she vanishes, without sound, without motion. One moment she is walking beside you, and the next there's only an empty path and the silence of the tombs. They call her the Lady in White. Her story, like most ghost stories, is stitched together from fragments and whispers. Some say she was a widow, inconsolable after the loss of her beloved, visiting every evening for a funeral that never ended, until the weight of grief pulled her into the grave beside him. Others believe she's a lost soul, her own grave unmarked, roaming the necropolis in search of a memory no one alive recalls. What gives this tale its power isn't drama but repetition. Too many sightings, too many gasps. Tour guides swear by her. Visitors have captured strange blurs in photographs. Even the groundskeepers lower their voices near the northwest corner after sunset. And sometimes people say she looks right at them. Not angry, not sad, just waiting. In the labyrinth of mausoleums where marble angels weep, it begins with a flicker, though. A soft glow behind the stained glass of a sealed tomb. There is no door, no key, no earthly way a candle could be lit. And yet inside a flame dances. Cemetery workers speak of these lights in whispers, especially after rain. In the vaults covered by vines and forgetfulness, they say their candles lit by someone who has forgotten they've ever lived. But the lights are not the only thing they whisper about. There's also voices. Visitors have reported faint whispering, muffled, unplaceable. Not Spanish, not Latin, not any language they recognize, just syllables and breath, like prayers uttered in reverse. These whispers rise near specific tombs, often at dawn, or just before the air turns heavy with the weight of rain. One tour guide, well seasoned and skeptical, felt the sharp tug at the back of his coat while standing near the past family mausoleum. He turned expecting to scold a curious tourist, but the path was empty. The group was 10 steps ahead of him. He finished the tour in silence, but today he doesn't walk that section alone anymore. Others have often described it not as voices, but as pressure shifting in the air, tingling on the skin. Some say it's walking through breath, like standing in a room that remembers. Perhaps it's grief that echoes here. Perhaps it's memory still trying to speak. Or perhaps the dead of Recoleta are simply not done telling their stories. Within the cemetery, even heat doesn't chase away the dead. On days when Buenos Aires swelters and the stone vaults radiate sunlight like ovens, certain corners of the cemetery remain inexplicably cold. You step from sunlight into shadow and something changes. Not just the temperature, but the atmosphere, the feeling. Visitors pause, goosebumps rise on their arms, the breeze vanishes, and yet the chill clings to their skin like breath from the crypt. These cold spots are not random. They tend to gather around the graves of the young, girls in white lace, infants buried with dolls. Some names carved in angelic-shaped headstones. The temperature drops as if it's grief it's never quite lifted. Some have reported more than just cold spots. It's a gentle tug on the sleeve, the sensation of fingers curling briefly around a wrist. A brush of air behind the neck, like someone leaning in to whisper, but there's no voice. Only the thud of your own heartbeat and the sudden stillness of the air. You will turn, but of course no one is there, and yet you feel like you're no longer alone. Skeptics say it's architecture, the thick walls and deep vaults holding shadows like cellars. But those who felt it know better. It's not the absence of heat. It's the presence of something else, something watching, something reaching. It's easy to mistake Recoleta Cemetery for a city because in many ways it is. There's narrow-lined streets with vaults instead of houses, names etched in stone instead of on doorbells, statues standing still like silent neighbors, and behind every door there's someone waiting, watching, remembered. With over 4,000 vaults, many stretching deep underground, Recoleta holds not just the dead, but their legacies, stacked, sealed, and surrounded by centuries of silence. These aren't graves, they're residences of memories, built for families whose bloodlines once ruled, rebelled, or vanished. And yet, for all its stillness, Recoleta hums with something more. Walk its paths at dawn or in the rain, and you may feel it. That slight tension in the air, the way the sound seems to bend behind or between walls. Not oppressive, not frightening, but present, alive. Love carved in marble, tragedy trapped beneath glass, regret sealed in iron, power that once ruled continents, fear that never made peace with the grave. They're not just passive memories, these are emotions that keep spirits close. These are the weights that tether the dead to the earth. Recoleta feels alive in death because the stories buried here are not finished. They're paused, interrupted, some mourn too deeply, others forgotten too easily, and some refuse to be forgotten at all. As the wrought iron gates of Recoleta groan shut behind us, the stories slip back into stone, and the dead return to their uneasy rest. But they're never quiet for long. Thank you for joining us as we crossed over the veil into Recoleta Cemetery, descending into the hauntings of history. The gate is sealed, the veil drawn, but death keeps no calendar. We'll return, as we always do, on the grim.